Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Based on that. So, but I do think like real contextual computing that's a lot smarter than what I'm doing is probably based with some AI and all of that stuff. So there's much like some programmer is listening to the show right now, like that's not contextual computing, So, and he's right. So yeah, anyway, that's my bad explanation of it. But SoundFlow allows you to chain a bunch of things together. So it works it's not dependent on using a Stream Deck, but it works really well with one. And what you can do is, say you have like a favorite EQ, you can put that on a button, and when you hit that button, it loads. It goes through the plugin menus and loads that plugin onto it. And it does it in a way that's different than other products that have tried to do this before. Namely, like the Slate Batch Commander was a very exciting product. Like when it came out, it was the first of its kind like this, but it would do those things like what SoundFlow does, but it would do them by, you had to tell it like the dimensions of your screen, and you had to line things up in a specific way so that it knew where to put the mouse to click. And SoundFlow is different because Pro Tools is only for Mac because of this reason, but I believe they're working on Windows, but there is accessibility in the Mac OS, and it's there for people who are blind and need alternate ways to interact with their computer. So basically every element of Pro Tools is made as a separate UI element, so that it can be accessible for people who are blind, like so that they can use other control devices and things that can access that. So Christian, the founder of SoundFlow, was brilliant. And he said, like, why don't I access those things? So instead of telling my mouse, click 13 pixels from the left, I'll tell it, click on this very specific UI element that's being reported to the Mac OS or whatever. So that's about as far as my knowledge goes on it. And I don't want to mess it up and like Christian be like, what are you talking about, dude? But that's how he's doing it to make it work for people. Because Batch Commander was an amazing idea, but it took a lot of setup and something would kind of always go wrong. And if you weren't on like the Slate tablet and all that. So SoundFlow is not dependent on like, are you running at this resolution, or is Pro Tools positioned in this way or whatever. It can access everything without, kind of throwing your mouse all over the screen and doing those things.
Is it working with other DAWs or only with Pro Tools?
So right now it's Pro Tools. You can do things with other DAWs, but it does start getting into the like click 13 pixels to the left of the record button kind of stuff or whatever. So you can set
But it sounds
things
like
up.
it's something that could eventually be programmed for Logic or Cubase or...
Yeah, and the main holdup there is like if you take a young DAW like Luna, it takes a lot of resources to make something handicapped accessible like that. But as soon as they do, SoundFlow will be able to check it out, and do things with it. So as more DAWs make themselves accessible to the OS like that, then SoundFlow can work with them. So it wasn't created just to work with Pro Tools, and there's nothing about it that says it can only work with Pro Tools. It's just dependent on apps that are accessible, handicapped accessible.
Got it.
Yeah, to the OS.
Got it.
So
super interesting.
It's absolutely incredible though. Like where it gets really powerful is when you realize the things that you do that are repetitive. And this goes the same for like the Zapier style stuff too. But let's say like when you do a setup on your next song that you're mixing, if you kind of realize like, well, I always route the drums to the same place. I always color them orange, and I always create like a stereo aux on them for a drum bus. And then I throw a 33609 or whatever it is. Like, again, you have to move with intention, but like, you remember like the steps that you kind of do on every single mix. If you just kind of write those down, and then basically like how I've kind of snowballed all of these like automations into each other to make it really fast is, I would just, every time I had a little bit of time, I would pull out the notepad and be like, what's one of these things that I wrote down that I do all the time that I could just automate really quick? And I would just build one little piece of the automation. And then I kept doing that every time I had like, 30 minutes or something like that. It was like, or if I just needed a break, from mixing, it'd be like, I'm going to go build a SoundFlow automation real quick, and then I'll get back to mixing.
Do you have to know coding to do all this stuff with SoundFlow, or is it
not really
pretty?
Not really.
Not really.
And I would say not really to like a 90%, 95% level. or whatever, you can get it to do absolutely amazing things like Andrew Shep's Bounce Factory if you know how to code. So Bounce Factory, it wasn't like a backdoor thing with SoundFlow where, they were like, oh, we'll let you like have access to this part of the program so you can build this great app. He did that with everything that's available to you in SoundFlow. And he learned how to code from the SoundFlow forums just from asking people. So that gives you an idea of like the community that's around it is just amazingly helpful. If you're like, hey, I want to build an automation that does this, I don't know JavaScript at all. Somebody will be like, oh, here's the code. Like somebody will just do it and send you the code. And it's an amazing, like nobody's obligated to do that, but like that's the kind of community that's going on there, which is awesome. And then from that, you start kind of learning the code yourself. Like I've picked up a little JavaScript because of SoundFlow, and I'm not, I remember like some of my programming from 20 years ago or whatever, but not much.
At the Ohio State University.
Yeah. So what they've done in the recent release though is they've made a lot more things built into SoundFlow. Like, so instead of having to code things yourself, you can usually find the thing that you want it to do a lot more easy. So they went through themselves basically in Pro Tools and thought like, let's automate every single thing we can think of, every single single function inside of it. So there's usually like, if you're like, I really want to like, route it to a specific aux, there's probably a pre-built automation in there that you could bring into your macro that will do that.
So cool. I think like the takeaway is, first of all, check this out, and but also like think about what are those repetitive tasks that you find yourself doing over and over again, and try to catch yourself while you're doing them and be like, why am I still doing this? Like, or I should really learn the key command for this. Like, come on, I've been using this DAW for 12 years,
Yeah, totally.
Like, just, or if, because these DAWs are so deep and you could really do so much with them, even without like SoundFlow.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
And there's always ways to make yourself a little bit faster, a little bit better. And I think it's like a daily. I imagine it's like a daily thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, how can I get this even more, a little bit more systematized? And I think it's super important. And it's part of the future, of doing what we're doing, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely. One thought with that is like all of the things that I've been like trying to automate and speed up or like move into SoundFlow and all that. All of those things are there to help me stay in flow state, right? Like flow state is the most beautiful thing when you're mixing a song and you just like hours go by on the clock and you didn't notice, and damn, was that great.
Yes.
It's like floating or flying. It's like one of my favorite things in life is flow state. So all of it is like, how do I stay in flow state for longer? Like what pulls me out of flow state? It's usually like, oh, I need like something with a little mid-range bump on this vocal. The Arouser will do that. Okay, plugin menu. All right. Empirical Labs makes that. Okay, there's a distressor, little freak. Okay, there's the Arouser. Click. All right, what was I doing? Like that pulls me out of flow state. So like having my Stream Deck there and then being like, oh, I need a mid-range bump on that. Arouser button. Click. Boom. There it is. All right, tweak. Here we go. Like it's the argument that a lot of people say is like, oh, you spent like, say it takes me 10 minutes to build the automation to load the Arouser, which it doesn't. It takes about like 30 seconds, but say it did. They'll be like, oh, you spent 10 minutes building that automation. Is it really going to save you 10 minutes of time? It's like, well, if I use the Arouser, like, however many times I'm going to use it for the rest of my career, it's definitely going to return more than 10 minutes of time.
I mean, I'm a Logic user, so I'll just shout this out for all the Logic users out there. Logic doesn't have this built in, but you can get this third-party app called Plug Search, where you literally just hit Control on the on the insert that you want to put a plug in, and then you just search for the plugin, and then bam, it does all of that for you. And that is I think it's like $20 worth every penny and beyond for the kind of work that I'm doing. So, absolutely. And they also have a gain control. So I think the whole package is like $40 or something. So they're not paying me for this. I'm just shouting them out because I use it literally all the time.
Right.
And so it's just like gain it up a bit, gain it down a bit. Pull up a thing. And these are things that maybe Logic should figure out how to implement by themselves. But that $40 just, has gone very, very good. Yeah, I don't think. And now I'm in my flow state. It's like, okay, I want the Pro Q3. Bam, Control. There it is. Bum.
Yeah.
Let's go. Hey, do the EQ move on. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's like that's all it is. So it's not quite as fast as pushing a button, but it's I type pretty fast, so
Yeah.
it's not bad.
Well, outside of SoundFlow, the Stream Deck thing, and no, I'm not like affiliated with them. The SoundFlow thing, like you can assign any kind of like any hotkey, or you can make your own macros inside of Stream Deck outside of SoundFlow and all that. So Stream Deck's awesome. I recommend it to everybody. There's a lot of things you can set up without SoundFlow or Keyboard Maestro or anything, even inside of it. But
amazing. Is there a video or something that you would shout out to be like a good like, deep dive into like getting started with, SoundFlow that maybe it's the one that you did with Andrew Sheps.
Yeah.
What would be like a good place to start for people to kind of get more educated? Even?
And I'm not affiliated with SoundFlow either. I feel like I have to say that. Maybe I don't. But they have a free 14-day trial thing for it, or maybe it's 30 days. I'm not even sure. But you can try it out for free, and it does automate more than Pro Tools. It like will work with your whole computer. There's a lot of things you can do that, audio or not, it's awesome. As far as videos, in the last update, they went through a lot of great lengths to onboard users better. So with the first time that you use it, there's guided tool tips and like a little guided tour thing. And then they also made really good introduction videos. And then if you want to go further and see us get super nerdy, Andrew Sheps and I did a video of SoundFlow, like introducing it, and kind of Andrew like running examples of his scripts and talking about, all the amazing things you can do and all that. So
yeah. Amazing. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well as just a regular SoundFlow link, so people can go definitely go check that out.
Yeah.
I feel like we've gone so long already, and we haven't even really talked about your approach to mixing and producing, which is usually like the core of what I talk about on this show. And maybe we'll just have to do another episode at some point, but let's get into it at least a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, whatever you have time for. Yeah.
I'm debating if we should just start with the sauce segment so that we make sure we get that in, and then we can kind of use that as like a launch point to kind of get into your approach to mixing.
Yeah, let's do it.
So you sent me a track called West End by Buggy. Mm-hmm. So let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds, and we'll chat about, a bit about what went into that and take it from there.
Awesome.
Sound cool?
Sounds great.
In the dead of night, alive and looking for answers, like calling for a cure in an echo chamber. It always seems to be that our direction comes from some well-dressed distraction as a corporate savior.
Man, there's so much going on. It's like a hectic, frenetic track. Super distorted and energetic, and super cool.
So fun to make. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that mix. What went into that?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to shout out the artist. It's Buggy. Her name is Gretchen King, and her backstory is awesome too. Like she's an amazing person, but she was in a very successful local Columbus band in the early 2010s, I want to say. She, that band like wound up ending, and she moved out to Los Angeles for a graphic design position. A very talented graphic designer and artist, and she saved up a bunch of money she had in the back of her head that she wanted to make a record where there was no band that was telling her what to do. Basically, like she could have complete creative freedom.